All right. We've officially kicked off. Hello and welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for joining this Electus Society training. This is all about the top 10 plus books because I didn't want to just do 10 of them. There'd be so many that I actually want to share with you. And this is the beginning of the year. So this is an opportunity to help transform all the different areas of our lives, right? And all the different kind of subjects. So again, for those who are new members or first time watching this video, again, my name is Tim Duffy. I'm the founder of Electus Society. All our mission is to really help create conscious leaders with real world skills. So I'm a leadership trainer. I'm a life coach. I'm also a Reiki master and teacher. I've been doing this for almost 2 decades now. And my claim to fame is really I was part of the team that helped grow the National Society of Leadership and Success to over 1 million members. I worked there for over 12 years, managed and coached over 600 people. And I'm also the former head coach of Landmark Worldwide, an organization that's, very well established internationally to help cause a transformation in your life. And so I really learned a lot of skills on how to actually change and make change in your own life and help other people in their lives, right? To have a breakthrough. Usually there's something that's blocking them or limiting them from preventing them from having success in terms of their goals and dreams. So, what are we going to be talking about today? What are the learning outcomes? There's really going to be 6 areas. We're going to have a discussion. I'd like to open up to the group if anybody wants to share what their favorite books are in any of these 6 different areas. As I'm actually going through the whole presentation, I'm going to be sharing my top favorite books, and I'm going to share at least one key insight, or maybe even two, from what I got out of that book, so that as you guys are creating your, goals for 2025, maybe these some helpful tips that can help support you in your goals. And so, before we jump into the training, I always like to start off with a 2-minute grounded meditation. This is not only for everybody else, but it's also including for me to be present and be able to best serve you. So it's just going to be 2 minutes. Let's start it right now.
Hello there, and welcome to this 2-minute meditation for grounding. Begin by sitting in a chair with your feet touching the floor. Relax your hands on your thighs with your palms facing upwards, and close your eyes. Begin to breathe slowly, in and out, noticing the feeling of how the air expands and contracts your belly and chest. Relax your body from head to toe and begin to imagine yourself in a beautiful, calming forest. Stay here and just admire the view, the trees, the sky, feeling the grass under your feet. Maybe it's autumn here and you feel the fallen leaves under your feet. As you stay here, relaxed and still, visualize how tiny roots begin to grow from the soles of your feet. These roots grow into the earth and make you feel grounded and secure. You now connect with Mother Nature's positive energy, making you feel so protected and loved. See how these roots begin to grow deeper and deeper into the earth, becoming thicker. Observe how you feel now, and when you feel ready, move your toes and fingers. Open your eyes and continue your day filled with centeredness, confidence, and compassion.
Namaste. All right, let's jump in. So let's start off with the discussion. Who would like to share what are some of their favorite books to cause a transformation in any area of your life, whether it's health, wealth, career, your family, friends, spirituality, relationship with loved ones. Okay, David, I see your hand first. Go ahead, share.
So there's been one book that's been helping me out a lot, and it helps me to deal with like the lack of or
Mm.
believe or not believe that there's a lack. It's something to strive towards too. It's called the Abundance Project.
Ooh, tell me about it. What is it about? What do you get?
Well, so I'll give you a synopsis of what it is. Um, well, the Abundance Project is give you the idea. Okay, the Abundance Project's by Derek Rydell. That's the author.
Mhm.
Okay, so give a little background context with that. But the abundance project is going about scarcity, right? So like, what is the one thing that we always have to like, we worry about as individuals is what we are constantly lacking,
Yeah.
right? Whether it be in money, health, wealth, friends, spirituality,
Mhm.
lack of love in the relationship.
Mhm.
And it's like, it teaches you to, well, for what I got out of it, it teaches you how to look, to build up your resources. Not necessarily your financial resources per se, but it goes along with that too. It's more of like your internal resources, like your self love, your your attention to your attention, being present,
Yeah.
uh, confronting what stories we tell ourselves on a literally on a day to day basis with how with what we have to confront every day. I mean, this Derek Rydell also gives an account of his life of what he has had to overcome in personal challenges growing up as a kid.
Mm.
And I don't want to spoil it for everyone, but just for the most part, what I got out of it was there's no such thing as a lack of. It's what
Mm.
can be worked up to, and it starts off with taking responsibility and just making the moves going forward and where to go and strive, and that's pretty much how it occurs for me. That's how I live my life day to day.
I love that. Now, my favorite part based on that book, you said it's called Abundance by David Rodell, or correct?
Derek Rydell.
Derek Rydell. Okay, excellent. I wrote it down, and that's actually one of the concepts we're going to be talking later in some of the books that I'm going to recommend. You've mentioned the key word taking responsibility. How many times do we actually feel like victims that we're like, oh, why is this stuff happening to us? I feel so terrible. And the moment that we actually flip that and say, you know what, I can't always control everything that goes on in my life, but I'm responsible for taking action. Well, guess what? Then that gives us some power because sometimes we feel powerless, right? And you're right. There's could be moments where we're experiencing lack. You don't feel like you have anything, but I always love this whole analogy. It's like any poor person anywhere across the world would beg and plead to just be a poor person in America. Like we have no idea just the comforts and access and the freedoms that we have, and so we're just not in a state of gratitude and abundance. We are what we focus on. So no, I really really appreciate that, David. Thanks so much for sharing. Kieran, I see you mentioned a book, Risk Forward by Victoria Lablam. Okay, if I'm pronouncing her name correctly. What key insights did you get from that book, if you don't mind sharing?
Yeah, Tim. So I actually discovered this book at my old workplace. So I would say um between 2023 and 2024.
Okay.
Um I would say Risk Forward uh focuses on if you have ever felt stagnant or stuck or lost in trying to figure out your next move. Um, Oftentimes we're trying to, well, especially being an Electus, but I would say you're trying to find your sense of purpose, right? You're trying to go into your conscious self and trying to figure out like what type of legacy you want to create, right? So I feel like with this Risk Forward by Victoria Lablam, she basically talks about the essence of like risking forward. Like you're taking risk in your life that if things like you don't have to have a clear cut plan. And goal setting doesn't have to necessarily be like oh, you got to do this to reach this goal, to reach this goal. It's kind of more of like the path doesn't always have to be linear and everybody has their own journey. And she also kind of gives insight into how she was able to test out an idea, what she had for a business, and like basically talking about the trials and tribulations and how she had to create risks in her life. Which it was pretty interesting because sometimes like we think of a certain plan um that we want to follow, but sometimes they don't always work out and you have to kind of get back up and try something new. So I think that's the purpose of like taking risks and like trying to figure out what you want to do in terms of your career. Um Especially to the point that you're stuck, because if you don't try anything, then it feels like you're going to fail.
Wow. I mean, no, that's very, very powerful. You know, the image that I have in my mind is this famous story that I learned from one of my mentors about elephants in the circus, where as a baby elephant, all they did was they put a big chain around the elephant's foot, and they stuck connected to a stick in the ground, and every time the elephant tried to move, the chain would pull on their leg, and so they got conditioned on limiting their potential. And so at one point, they become giant animals that are so powerful that can crush people. You know, all they need to do is have a little string, a little rope, and a little stick in the ground. And just feeling that prevents them from actually doing anything or achieving or going anywhere. And so when you're talking about this book, Risk Forward, I wrote it down as well. I really love it because how many times are we terrified from taking action of something in the fear of what might happen? And guess what? Chances are that fear, false evidence appearing real, doesn't even actually happen. And they're like, I'll only do this if I know exactly what's going to happen. It's like, no, you never know what's going to happen. But that's the difference that separates people who feel like victims, who stay limited in their life, and versus those people who say, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't even know where I need to go. I just need to put one little step forward, and I just need to fail forward. Like, even if I mess up, I think that it's really worth the risk. So I've been terrified. I've done a lot of different things, creating Electus Society, creating my own Duffy Leadership Incorporated, where I do speaking engagements. It's like, even doing this training, I was terrified. It's like, was anybody going to show up? It's like, in the end, and as soon as I post it online, I'm very happy. Like, over 50 people or more of the community will watch it instantly. Like, it's really exciting. But again, I have all those fears just like everybody else, and it's just about actually flexing that and overcoming that fear. And I love that idea of risk forward. Thanks so much, Kieran, for sharing. I'm just also looking at some of the comments. Francesca says that she listens to podcasts. Mel Robbins. Mel Robbins, I just recently heard her on a podcast with Scott Galloway. It was fantastic. She has a new book called Let Them, and then also Let Me, on how many times we try to control the world. Francesca, do you want to add anything about Mel Robbins, recommending her books and stuff like that? Or is that good enough?
Oh, I absolutely love Mel Robbins. I listen to her podcast. Like I go walking and I listen to her. I have a hard time reading anything other than academics or between work. So like podcasts are wonderful. And I listened to a podcast with her and Evie Pampas, and it is absolutely phenomenal since Evie Pampas used to be a Secret Service agent. And I heard about her book and I've been trying to pick it up and read it, but unfortunately it's just been a little hard and I have ADHD, so it's hard for me to like listen to a book. I can listen to podcasts, but not books. It's weird. And just the whole about focus and about how to be able to maintain your level of identity and know that you go in with confidence, and how to be succinct whenever you speak. And especially, Evie is a small woman, and you walk into a room and just, her level of confidence. And the whole podcast was just absolutely phenomenal. And what I loved about the conversation between her and Mel is that Mel was saying to her, how to read people is what I thought it was about if you listen to the podcast. And what she gained out of it and what I gained out of it was more so of how, not necessarily how to read people, but how you present yourself and first impressions, but how to learn how, it's more about, being confident in the way you speak and knowing yourself and knowing your value. It was just such an impressive podcast. If you get a chance to listen to it, I highly recommend it.
I definitely will. And this is what I love about the Electus community is like we're all different sharing, and now we have all a bunch of different action steps of different books to read or podcasts to listen to. And just I'll let you know as an inside tip, Francesca, I actually met Mel Robbins when I was working for NSLS.
Oh my
She
gosh.
Yeah, I hugged her. Like, I showed her a copy of my first book that I had. I'm like, what do you think? And she's like, this has like a spiritual component. She's like, you remind me of one of the editors of Success Magazine, Darren Hardy. You should connect with him. And I'm like, what? And she's just an amazing woman that has the ability. She really operates from her left brain, and that's what I really like is because she's a straight shooter she has a way of communicating, like you said, very direct and to the point, like Ivy does, and it's just a way of you. She even talks about like these spiritual content concepts, but it doesn't have to be spiritual at all. It's just like common sense, And yes, amazing woman, great insight. And just remember, and this is to you, Francesca, to David, to Kieran, to anybody else who's watching, if you have books that you really love, I want to extend an invitation. Anybody who's a member of Electus Society community, if they want to do a training just about their favorite book as part of their leadership library series, I will help them create that. I'll even co-facilitate it. But again, to me, we just need to have this great content and give people different tools, skills, and actions so that they can live more productive, healthy, successful lives and take constructive action. So again, just an open invitation to all of you. So let's keep going for the sake of the training. Now I'm going to get to share with you my favorite books and what I got from them. So let's start off with the first area. And some of you who have been lifelong members, with Electus Society for a couple years now, will kind of see some of these books that I've kind of talked about in previous trainings. And so what I really want to do is I'm going to give you one or two books for each category. So here's the first one that I want to give is in terms of your health. Now, every single person that I know is suffering from a health ailment, right? For me, when I was younger, it was acne. I had scoliosis. I had a whole bunch of different health problems. And so sometimes if you go to Google and you search, how to solve these problems, you're going to get a mixture of all this other kind of information. And so there's so much disinformation out there as well as like, how can you actually find one book to actually rely upon to get some facts, some basic information to feel empowered to take control of your life. And this book is one of my favorites. It's it's about like 2 inches thick, so it has over 1,000 pages. And let me tell you what's in this book. The first, it's blocked off into 3 sections. The first section is all understanding health. What is nutrition? What is different diets? What are all the different vitamins? What are they for? Why? What are the important minerals? How do you get clean air? How do you get clean water? Tell me all about the proteins, antioxidant, enzymes, herbs. It's just like, wow. Like if I could have one health book just on basic 101, that's just the first 30, 40 pages. The next part is the most valuable part for me for the whole entire book. Whatever disease that you have, right? Now you have a couple of pages dedicated to everything that you need to know to start you on your journey to deal with that health ailment. It will tell you what is the causes of this health ailment from in terms of the environment, in terms of what you eat, in terms of, whatever it may be. What were the supplements that you take? What are the most highly recommended supplements to the least effective supplements? Like that's pretty cool when they can kind of categorize them. What herbs? Now, recommendations stuff is all about lifestyle. What lifestyle changes you need to make and considerations, things to avoid, to be careful of. And then the last part of the book is part three is all alternative therapies, because again, I'm always a big advocate of using complementary medicine, meaning know what the traditional medicine recommends, but they just want to cut you up. One Google executive described, what's the American healthcare system? Oh yeah, it's they give you everything to make you sick, and they want to keep you sick, but they don't want to prevent you from dying. That's our that's our American health system in a nutshell, from a high level Google health executive, that was researching all about health. And so it's important that we understand that there's more than one modality to solve our problem. From acupuncture, colon cleansing, hyperbaric oxygen chamber. You don't even know if you go online those things. Well, here's an excellent resource. Okay. So highly recommend that book. And again, I'll just share with you this one story. I had acne when I was growing up. Some of you may know from my previous trainings, and I was really suffering. And I went to I did Proactive. I researched I put all the different ointments on my face. Proactive says diet has no effect on whether you get acne or not. It's just hormonal. I went to dermatologists. They told me, hey, we're going to give you steroids and different creams, retinol A, and then maybe we'll put you on Accutane. And I'm like, what? And I'm like, let me read the side effects. What? It dries out your eyes. You may need eye drops for the rest of your life. Oh my goodness. You may need, your skin may be dry, your chips may be chapped, and you may need chapstick for the rest of your life. And I'm like, whoa, this stuff is really scary. And so in this book, I found out that it says, what are all the causes of acne? And one of them, they said, your skin is your third is like your third kidney. It's like your organ to help cleanse. If your liver and kidney does not cleanse, it comes out through your skin. And it basically recommended drinking a lot of water, a lot of fiber. I was eating a lot of fiber. I was drinking water, but it wasn't until I went to all these different doctors that says, no, your liver's is like stressed out, and you need to drink a lot more water. You need to have a lot more bowel movements, and that will clear up your acne. So the Bulge book had the answer, but I just didn't know the full part of it. I had to go through other doctors. So again, don't view it as the end all be all, but at least it starts you on that journey. Okay. And then, by the way, I was able to drink so much more water, and then all my skin acne went away. So incredible. Um, the next book is Tony Robbins and Peter Diamandis and the other co-authors wrote this book called Life Force, right? How to increase your energy, strength, vitality, health span, and power. And so again, I can't I see Francesca. I love Tony Robbins. Me too. I love Tony Robbins as well. I actually have another book of his recommendation in here. I really think he's a servant of the light, and he, again, he's done his wealth, and now all his books that he produces, he donates all the proceeds to help feed children. Like, it's an amazing thing that he does. So in this book, this is all about longevity, and you start hearing all about his health ailments and what has happened to him. And there's so many different good advice that he recommends. For example, always get a second opinion from a different doctor, right? In fact, I recommend getting a third opinion, right? And then he also talks about all the different reasons on why people get sick and why do people die. And again, I go into much more detail in another leadership library training where we did a book just about this book, Life Force, over the first 200 pages. But here's some key concepts that I want you to take away from the book. He says, of all the top causes of death, the number third is cancer. But guess what's the solution? Early detection. And it says you have an 89% chance of surviving cancer if it's detected early, right? It's much less if you detect it late. And that's directly from the National Cancer Institute. And so what Tony Robbins has done is he's partnered with Peter Diamandis, who's all about a futurist and he's all about longevity. They created a company called Fountain Life with some other amazing individuals. And what it's all about is doing all these diagnostic tests and really figuring out what's going on in your body, where are you deficient, what's going on with your hormones, doing full MRIs, CAT scans, using artificial intelligence to analyze all this data and see where the problems, and so you can prevent them before they ever happen. I have this on my to-do list for something that I want to do. The cost was very expensive. It was at one point like $15,000, but now guess what? It's been around for several years, and they now have tests that can be done from your own home. They're like $350 or something like that, and you can actually take these tests. You can sign up for 1 month because they want you on a subscription model. But after you do all this test and you have this consult, you can always discontinue at any time. So it's something on my to-do list that I definitely want to do. They have starting to have centers in Florida, New York, and all around the country, and they're popping up. There was like 4 of them, and now I think there's much more. So another tip from the book is, how can you increase your lifespan? Well, if you're working on health as a transformative goal in 2025, whether it's mental, physical health, here are all the things that you need to know. Is number one is your sleep. And I just wanted to include a couple of tips. Tip number one, how much sleep are you getting, right? Some people are like, well, I get 7 hours or I get out 8 hours, but what if you actually need 9 hours? And so, how do you know whether you're getting your full amount of sleep? Is whether you can actually sleep and not need an alarm, and your body says, I feel fully rested. How many people in this world cannot wake up with an alarm? Like, it's really sad. And that means that you're sleep deprived. So, again, get your sleep. Don't overeat. We constantly in America want to feel full, right? And we get used to that feeling, but that's not good. It's the whole idea is that you eat until you're 80% full. Slow down. Eat well, plant-based diet or Mediterranean. And what does that mean? Eat a lot of more vegetables, eat a lot more legumes, eat beans, eat chickpeas, have bean salads, have hummus, have, with carrots and all these other kind of things. You can splurge. I have Greek yogurt, non-fat Greek yogurt. I can usually use some organic feta cheese sometimes, but a lot of people are able to stick to the Mediterranean diet. And it's one of the most well-studied diet. So people don't feel like they have to miss out on stuff. And again, it also incorporates fish, but I would always recommend, again, I'm not a doctor or health specialist, but do small fish like sardines in a can with olive oil because there's a lot of pollution and mercury in the water. Exercise, use weights, right? High intensity interval training. We had David, who was also joining us on this training. He's a personal trainer. I've had friends who are personal trainers. It's so important that if you're going to start weightlifting, that you know proper form. Because I have had a friend that we would go to the gym together and then we would work out home separately on the video. And I would want to do a lot of the weight. And he's like, Tim, you're cheating. I'm like, what are you doing? He's like, you are lifting weights for vanity, not for your actual muscles. Do it right. And then once I actually did the form, I'm like, I can't do it this way. He's like, then you have to lower your weight. And so it's very humbling when you ever have a personal trainer. So I highly recommend one if you can get one. There's now everything's free online classes to start off. You can even do stuff via Zoom and stuff like that. I have a friend who's going to start doing classes on the weekends and promoting them free. So definitely, I recommend you do that. Avoid stress, reduce your stress. So how can you do that? With meditation, gratitude journal. Those who have been in Electus Society for a long time know how much I keep harping on this, but it's so important. Remove toxic family and friends. Yes. There's sometimes we feel guilty because we have family that like, oh, because they're family, I have to be around them. No, okay. You have a right to protect yourself from people that harm you, and that includes family. So you have the right to protect yourself. Throw out that window. 2025 should be the year where you're separating the wheat from the chaff. You want to have good, constructive people in your life. Okay, so I'm just looking at some of the comments. Kieran, we need to wake up with the alarm because we can oversleep and not wake up for school. Yes, definitely. But however, what I would say is if you find yourself, yes, have that alarm as your backup. But if you find that you need it, maybe you should go to bed earlier, or maybe on the weekends, definitely don't wake up with alarm and catch up on your sleep. Yep. On weekends, I know you have more control. A strength training for fitness, increase your protein intake. Yes, absolutely. Now, the protein that I eat for those people who want to eat healthy, all the personal trainers, all my friends who've worked on transforming your health and diet, they say that when you eat, you need to have your fats, your carbohydrates, and your protein with everything. And remember, I also have a chiropractor who is also an enzyme specialist. So she touches my organs and tells me where I'm deficient or where my body needs work or something like that. And she'll touch my adrenal glands and by poking in, and based on how firm it is, means how inflamed it is. And she'll say, Tim, your adrenal glands are really hard. What's going on? Why are you stressed out? What are you doing? Oh, guess what? I may have drank too much yerba mate caffeine tea. You got to cut back. And I'm like, oh my goodness. Tim, you're not, your protein is very low. Are you getting enough protein? I'm like, no, I'm not. She's like, okay, if you're having big salads, I know you're a vegetarian, add some protein in there, add chickpeas, add beans, add a one hard-boiled egg. And I started doing that. I started eating more Greek yogurt. I have a plant-based protein powder. Guess what? I go back to her. Tim, great job. You're getting, your body says that you're getting the protein you need. Wow, like this is amazing. I have to just incorporate more protein in my diet. And then also I'm seeing relationships included. Yes, Kira, we got to have positive relationships and people that uplift us. And if people, I was recently listening, I think I posted this on LinkedIn as a post. There was this woman by the name of Tara Arnold, who's a big also student of Saint Germain, and she shared this comment that sometimes we're friends with people and they're only friends with us because we feed their ego. Right? What does that mean? It's like, oh, they'll be my friend if I do exactly what they want me to say and do, but you're actually not being authentic to who you really are. The moment you stop feeding their ego, guess what? They were really never your friends in the first place. And so suddenly they get upset with you or they become angry with you. So 2025 should be the year of authenticity, right? And then also, yes, I see your comment, Karen, about romantic relationships. Well, we're definitely going to talk about that, later on in the presentation. So if you guys are really focused on health, I'm going to give a recommendation to watch other Electus Society trainings. We have one, which is very important, creating health and wellness through nutrition and lifestyle. I did that. I co-facilitated that with Felicia McIntosh, who's a certified functional nutritionist counselor. It was really, really good. And she shares her whole life story and how she transformed her life, reversed cancer, and all this other stuff. Amazing woman. And I incorporate a lot of her concepts and recommendations into my food and lifestyle. And I start doing food prepping on the weekends and stuff like that. Very, very good. And then I did a whole leadership library series on life force. So that's part of the leadership libraries of Electus Society. All these videos can be found on YouTube. Just type them in, Electus Society. You can also find them on the training overview page on Electus Society website. Okay. The next one is wealth. All right, we're all wanted, to be wealthy, right? Abundance. My favorite book is going to have to be Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. Now, the reason why I think this is the most important book is because I love when different authors give me insights that I had never heard of and give me a different way of thinking than what traditional financial planners and things like that tell me. And so in this book, there was two key concepts that really blew me away. And one is he said your house is not an asset. And he said the definition of asset is something that puts money into your pocket. So if you are going to invest in real estate, then it should be the type of property that actually brings you income. Now, I have no internal desire to be a real estate mogul and own a lot of properties. That's not what's really I'm passionate about. But guess what? If you do own a home, right? Maybe you can, at a point in the future, maybe you can buy a home that has like different level floors, so you could actually rent out the basement or rent out the first floor. If you ever found yourself, without a job or something like that, well, you'd be surprised that income that you could get from that rental property could really help you, or it could help pay off the mortgage and things like that. So this is really a very, very important concept to realize. And then and definitely because I do own a home, it is not an asset because it sucks money out of you left and right for fixing up stuff. The other thing is he talked about this cash flow quadrant is that, people, you have to understand that there's four types of people, right? Employees are people that get paid for their time and they get money. A self-employed person, they actually use their own time to get money. That's who I am. I'm actually a self-employed person. And a business owner is somebody who doesn't actually involved in the business. Sometimes they get confused, but they have employees that bring them money and add them value. And then the investor, right? That's somebody who invests in something and it gives them money. And what's so amazing is that, a lot of people are promoting entrepreneurship. Like the only way to wealth is to become an entrepreneur. Well, it's very hard to be an entrepreneur. I did a whole training about that. My successes and failures as an entrepreneur. Learn from my successes and my failures. But guess what? You can develop wealth and abundance simply being by employee, but also being a very good investor. So with the money that you make, investing that money wisely. And so that kind of leads me to the second book, which I highly recommend about wealth, is Tony Robbins again. Money, Mastering the Game, 7 Simple Steps to Financial Freedom. Now, I can't cover the entire book of what he covered in here, but I'll at least share with you one of the most important key takeaways for me is understanding this idea that you need to pay yourself first. And if you are going to save, understand the value of compound interest. A lot of people don't get it or understand it or may have heard of it, especially if you're like me, who grew up very poor and I didn't know anything. I didn't have any financial education from my parents. And so here's the most important concept: discipline. Live below your means and have delayed gratification. Now, I'm going to share with you something that's very important, that even though I recommended these 2 books, right? Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and then also Tony Robbins, Money, recognize that when you listen to different authors, they have different opinions. I actually regret listening to a podcast by Robert Kiyosaki. I even took one of his courses. I spent several $1,000s to become a real estate investor and stuff like that. But he's like, "Oh, don't invest in your 401k. That's for ninnies." He could be very, provocative and be very, say some very declarative statements. But guess what? Because I was listening to him and following his advice, I'm like, you're right. Maybe I shouldn't invest into the 401k. Maybe that's for suckers. Maybe I need to invest in gold and silver and all these other things. And guess what? I regret doing that because there is a habit of you taking your money out of every single paycheck and having it go and invest it. And it's like as if you don't see it. And it's that habit that you really want to develop. And so, again, so be careful once you listen to all these different wealth books. Everyone's going to give you tips, but do what works for you and try to follow what most people follow, right? Because, Robert Kiyosaki was said, "Oh, don't believe beneath your means. That sounds like, that's poverty mentality, and it's like, no, it's actually discipline mentality. And so the other important concept from this book, Money, Master the Game, is uh, that was so powerful is that, do you know how much financial institutions are just milking you dry? And he says you invest into your 401k, 403b, or Roth IRA, and you have to choose which ones to do. They take out so many fees that when you start looking at over time, you could have had millions of dollars, but as a result of all the fees that took it out, you only will have, after like 10, 20, 30 years, you only have $500,000. It's like, what? And so that's why, Tony Robbins says you got to invest in index funds, specifically the S&P 500. All other financial institutions, money managers and things like that, they compare their success to the S&P 500. And now, if you're not very familiar about the S&P 500, just think of it as the top 500 companies. And so if there was a horse race of all these different companies, all right, and you were a betting person, if you tried to invest in one of them, you're like, that horse could win or not. But the S&P 500 basically says, well, whoever's of these thousands and thousands of racehorses, we're going to only invest in the top 500 that win races all the time. You're like, woo, that's great. And he says, what if you have one horse that's really, really further ahead? We're going to invest more money in that individual or that individual horse. So it's like weighted. So right now, if you invest in the S&P 500, guess what? Like, it's been going up, even though we have been having signs of recession-like tendencies over the last couple quarters. A bunch of companies are not being profitable, but yet the S&P 500 goes up and up and up. Why? Because companies like Google, Microsoft, Nvidia, that does artificial intelligence chips, those are weighted much more than the other companies. So out of all these 500 companies, what if 400 didn't make money? Well, guess what? These top 3, 5, 7 companies, they're weighted more in this S&P 500. So you're still making more money. So again, very, very important concept to teach you. And then the idea of compound interest is if I were to invest $1,000 and I got 10% of it, I would, at the end of the year, I'd get $100. But what if I spent that $100 every time I got it? And I did this for 20 years. I just did 1,000, got 100 and kept it and spent it. Well, over 20 years, you would make $2,000. So an original 1,000 plus your 2,000 gets $3,000. But what if instead of you invested $1,000 and as a result at the end of the year you made $100, but then you now invested that 1,000 plus the 100 and times that by 10%? Well, guess what? Now by next year you're gonna, or the third year, you're gonna have $211. So it starts to actually start to become exponential, right? So you can see the compound interest, and that's why it's so important to invest and not worry about it, not looking about it, and just allow it to grow. And yeah, so very, very important concept. If you really love to learn more about wealth, if you're actually suffering financially, I've done a lot of different trainings about wealth and money because I'm fascinated by this topic. If there was one video I recommend if you're struggling with finances, it would be to watch this training, Creating Wealth and Abundance, my story of successes and failures, right? And the most important thing out of this training is in the middle where I say you have to develop a budget. And I actually provided you the exact budget sheet that I did and I use that's very simple, easy to use, because if you don't know where your money going, if you don't have control over your emotions, all that money is going to go away. And so you have to play a game with yourself. How much money can I save, right? So in that video, I actually show an image of basically how I used to buy pizza from Domino's just because I was tired and I could choose all my toppings on the app. And then I realized how much money I was spending if I did that like once a month or once every 2 weeks. And then like, well, what if I actually buy frozen pizza and then I add my own cheese on top of it and I actually do the math for you? And I could have gone on a vacation with all the money I would have saved just by buying frozen pizza. Right now, guess what I do? I don't even buy frozen pizza anymore. That training is 2 years old. Guess what I do now? I buy only healthy food for life, a high quality sprouted grain bread for like $6. And if I want pizza, guess what I do? I pour a little tomato sauce in it. I cut my own cheese and I make two little mini pizzas out of myself. I don't even buy frozen pizzas anymore because I'm trying to up my health content. I'm trying to save money. So those are the things that I'm doing. Okay. I also did 2 other trainings that you can watch about A Leader's Guide to Money and the Coming Financial Crisis. Yes, the financial crises happen, but you need to be know how to prepare for them, what really happens, understand inflation, deflation, how the economy works, because you guys may be at one point in charge in government, and you guys are citizens. So you need to vote for people who actually will help support and grow the economy and create equal opportunity versus other people that don't do that. And then this was part 2, which I did, was all about like understanding Bitcoin, understanding different alternative investments, and how to think about different portfolios. I talked about a lot about Ray Dalio, how the economy works, part 2. And then Leadership Library, this one about the other Tony Robbins book called The Holy Grail of Investing. This is all about what the wealthiest individuals in the world do. Again, Great Basic is use the S&P 500. That should be one part of your major portfolio. But now there's also all these alternative investments. And so you can check that out. But again, like I said, start off with this one first. All right, let's keep going. So let's talk about career. This is one of my favorite books for your career. It's called The Success Principles, How to Get From Where You Are to Where You Want to Be by Jack Canfield. And if you don't know who Jack Canfield is, he's the best-selling author of Chicken Soup for the Soul. And he created all that series. He's an amazing, amazing guy. So in this book, he outlines 64 principles for you to be successful in all areas of your life. And so I can't give you all 64 in this training, but I do want to give you what he started off with. Principle number 1. As soon as you open the book, chapter 1, principle number 1 is this. And this goes back to what we started with our conversation with David at the beginning. Number 1 principle is take 100% responsibility for your life. And he said that Robert Resnick created this formula, and I love it. E plus R equals O. And what does that mean is events are always going to happen into your life, right? You cannot control the events that happen in your life, but all you can control is the response to those events in your life. And if you are not happy with the outcome in your life, stop being a victim, stop blaming people, stop pointing fingers. All you can do is change your response to that event. And you keep changing your response until you get the outcome you want. That is what leaders do. That's what successful people do. Okay. Doesn't mean you don't ignore the factors and things that can contribute, but it's not helpful to constantly blame because then you feel it's disempowering, right? You have no control, right? Because you're actually giving the power to somebody else or some other thing. And then you could just fine, stay miserable, but it's not going to work. And so this can show up in the workplace. This can show up in terms of your diet. This can show up into the relationships. It's like, oh, why don't I have love in my life? Oh, why am I not getting promoted? Why, why am I not making more money? Whatever it is, well, do something about it. Change your response to change the outcome. It's very simple, but it's very hard for people to accept. It's much easier to play the victim. All right, so the next book that I'm going to recommend for your career is this book called The Three Laws of Performance: Rewriting the Future of Your Organization and Your Life. Now, the reason why I love this book is, as I started with the beginning of the presentation, I'm a former head coach for Landmark Worldwide. And for those of you who've done a lot of different leadership trainings with me, I talk a lot about Landmark Worldwide. Why? It's because I'm very grateful for them for all the tools that they gave me to be able to transform my life and to help transform the lives of other people. And so to do one of their events, there's a 3-day event called the Landmark Forum. Again, I did it. I had a transformation. I actually saved my relationship with my wife because of it. But guess what? A lot of the people that you meet in Landmark, they're so motivated and were so inspired by the change that they happen that they almost like, you got to do Landmark. You got to do it. If you want to have a successful life, you got to do Landmark. And so sometimes has been, some complaints from friends and families. It's like, is this a cult? Like, why are they like want you to, obsessed with doing those programs? And what I always tell people is, hey, don't worry. They're just very excited. They had a transformation in their life. And just like a religion, they just want to share it with other people. And they feel that this is the only way for you to actually have a transformation in your life. Choose to do it or not. If it resonates with you, if you see an opportunity, then don't. But some people will never want to do Landmark Worldwide, whether it's, and that's okay. You don't have to. Okay. And this is coming from a former, a head coach for one of their leadership programs. But what I do say is if you're a reader and you want to actually, you're in a position of leadership and you're working for a company or nonprofit, then this book I highly recommend. Why? It's because some of the key concepts that we learned in Landmark Worldwide is in this book. And Landmark Worldwide has a consulting group called Vanto Group. I think that's what it's called. And so these stories all throughout this book are based upon how they use these concepts to transform businesses, and not only transform businesses, transform your personal life. So there are 3 laws that they talk about this in book. That's the first half of the book, and then the second half of the book is all about leadership. So here are just some of the laws that I'll give you. How people perform correlates to how situations occur to them or occurs to them. I know that kind of sounds like what does that mean? Okay, I'm going to explain in a second, okay? Whenever something happens to us, whether you're in a job or whatever it is, something happens. Your boss does this, your spouse does this, your partner does this. What happens is we immediately create a meaning and we create a story about what just happened. Oh, my boss just gave me this new assignment. She doesn't care about me. She doesn't realize how much work I have, or whatever it may be. That's a story, that we created. And now it affects on how we affect and perform our work. So do you know that if you're working at a company with 500, 1,000, even 10 people, all these people have stories about what's happening, right? Either boss doesn't care about me, all they care about is money and stuff like that. So it's like, how does a typical organization work? Well, they usually say a bunch of leaders come into a room and they're the heads of all the different departments, and they have their retreats, their quarterly or annual meetings, and they're like, what are the problems with the company, and then what are our solutions, and what do we need to do? Great, this is what we need to solve, and these are the 3 to 5 areas we're going to accomplish. So guess what they do? They now go out to their departments and say, hey everybody, we're excited to share with you, top down, this is what we all need to do to change our organization to be more profitable, etc. Okay, any questions? Go do it. Just do what we tell you to do. It's all top down, right? But if the people are not bought in, if they think that the leaders lack integrity or whatever it may be, the bosses are like, why aren't they implementing it? We're the smart ones. We went into the room. We had the annual retreat. Why don't they get it? Well, this has to do with the real big idea that we can't cause change unless we deal with all the emotional issues, baggage, the stories that people have, and actually transform that. But how do you transform that? Well, there's a method, and I even use this method within my coaches. And when I'm coaching different people, I'm just going to use a simple example, and then I'm going to use a business example. Simple example might be, Tim, I'm talking to somebody, I want to lose weight. Okay. They know what they need to do. They need to eat less food. They're really overweight and they don't exercise. They lack motivation. And it's like, I want to lose weight. I want to lose weight. And so you could tell them till you're blue in the face, oh, all you need to do is eat less and exercise more. You're like, but I've done that and it doesn't work. And do you see how it's not going to get anywhere? Right. So what we really have to do is how do we transform that? Now look at law number 3. Future-based language transforms how the situation occurs to people. Now that sounds like very complex. What does that really mean? Well, when I'm working with a coach and I'm coaching somebody, I'll basically say, okay, here's the path that you're on. This is what you're currently doing, right? What's going to happen to you if you keep on this path? We call this the probable almost certain future. And so what ends up happening is most people don't realize the consequences of their current actions or inactions. So what's going to happen to you if you don't lose weight? Tell me, and I'll start asking them questions. What's going to happen? Well, I'm going to get sick. Well, what else? Then what might happen next? And I start getting them on a picture like, well, would you end up going to the hospital? Yeah. If you have diabetes, you might lose a limb, right? Then you might actually be in a wheelchair. How's that going to affect your relationship with your wife? How's it going to be with your children? How long are you going to live if you're up at this point? So it's like, again, I'm really painting a picture, not that what's going to happen. I'm saying this is what will happen, and you need to get clear on what those consequences are. And until they actually feel it with emotion and they can actually see it and they feel it, do I then ask the question, are you ready for a change? Is that the future that you want? And most of the time, if I've done my job well as a coach, they'll say, no, I don't want that. Okay, now is for the second part or the third part is what kind of future do you want to do? What do you want? What kind of life do you want to have with your partner? What would it look like if you lost all that weight? How would that make you feel? Then what would you do? And so now they're starting to envision of what that future could be if they actually exercised, if they lost all that weight. Well, guess what? I'm excited about that. Okay, great. Who do you have to be? What type of person do you have to be? What are your affirmations that are going to create that person? And they'll tell me, okay, whatever that is, I'm strong, I'm disciplined, I'm powerful, I'm motivated, whatever it might be, I'm healthy. That is going to keep them. And then I then say, what are the baby action steps? What are the little steps that you can take that's going to get you closer to that you're currently not doing? All right, I can't work out an hour. I'm busy. I'm working. I have to commute 2 hours each way. Okay, well, you have some time on the weekends, right? What about during your lunchtime? Can you do some push-ups? Can you do some squats? Can you prep your meals? All this is going to be in alignment for getting them to transform that future. Now, how does this apply to a company? Okay, So I want to share with you one story from this book, and this involved a company that was a mining company in South Africa, and this community that was mining, people were dying of AIDS. There was 15 accidents, and people died at the mine because people weren't following safety regulations. The company was not profitable, and like disaster after disaster was happening. They might have had to close down the company or close down the mine, which would put all these people at work. And so, guess what? There was also the executives were white, but all the South African people that were working the mines were black, and so there was a lot of racial tension too. It's like, so you have this new CEO comes, right, working with consultants from Vanto Group and Landmark Worldwide using this methodology, and they're like, we have to cause a transformation. Like, we have to do something big. Like, we're going to have to change the hearts and minds of these people. And so, guess what they did? The CEO, along with all the executives, goes to the village, right, where the mining, which, like, that never happens, right? And they start having a community meeting, and they're like, you shouldn't do that. They're going to kill you. They're going to be mad at you. They're like, he's like, no, we have to do it. We have to care about our people. We can't just do what we typically done in the past, like if we're going to cause a transformation. And so he's like, okay, I'm here. I'm here. I'm here with you as your new CEO. And let's talk about all the problems facing our company, and he just has everybody, complain. People are dying of AIDS. Yes, this is a problem. We got to address this. What else is going on? It's like the executives don't care about us, like he's just writing all the stuff down and getting them engaged. And like, this is what's, all the terrible things that are going on in this company. And then he basically says, okay, what is going to happen if we don't fix these problems? And they're like, oh, we're going to lose our jobs, whatever it may be, we're going to die, and all the people are sharing. And like, can you imagine all the emotion and stuff like that? And at this point, the AC breaks down and everybody's sweating. It's over 100 degrees and stuff like that. And then guess what happens? He's like, okay, that's what's going to happen if we don't do anything. What kind of future do we want to create with this company? Right? And they start envisioning a new future. All right. And it was so interesting because they did not trust these executives, and this goes on to the other parts in the book that I didn't have time to go into. Remember how we've talked a lot about in Electus Society about integrity, right? And how important that is, doing what you know to do, doing what's expected of you done as meant to be done, doing what you said you would do and doing it on time. Well, guess what? Some of the people didn't trust the executives, and they're like, you don't care about us. I dare you to actually spend the night here in our South African town in one of our local hotels, so that you can experience what it's like to live like we do. And guess what the CEO said? Okay, yes, I'm going to spend the night over there. Let's make that on the list. You can count on me to do it. It's like, wait, what? You're going to actually stay and sleep in this village with us as the people? Like, do you understand? Like, some of the people didn't even believe him, but in order for him to cause a transformation, there was drug lords, there's all this other kind of stuff. And yes, he ends up actually staying overnight in that village. The villagers were so afraid that the CEO was going to be killed that they had, as he slept, there were 7 security people who stayed up all night trying to protect the CEO. So lo and behold, he was one of the safest person in the whole entire village. But the idea of, when you have your employees actually saying, wow, this person does what he says he's going to do, or she does what she says she's going to do, it changes their listening of you. It changes how things occur to you. And then eventually, guess what? There's a success story. Guess what happens? They transform the company. They end up becoming profitable, and I like to say that company was profitable forever and it's been taking off. The CEO eventually left, but guess what happened? After many years, the CEO left. Some of those executive team that helped create all that, they also left. But guess what happens? They went back to the typical top-down executives. No, you do what we say to do. We need to become more profitable and stuff like that. And guess what? All the problems happen again. And so people don't understand that it's hard work to run an organization. It's hard work to be in integrity and to actually get input from the teams and to be humble and do that. So again, highly recommend you the book. And can I give you one more just for this career? Because I know a lot of you want to be successful in your career. There's this whole concept in this book called a racket. What is a racket? It's an illegal or fraudulent business. Usually it's like, look at this news or this newsstand, but guess what? When you go to the back of the room, they're actually selling drugs. So that's why they call it a racket. It's they're pretending out here, but behind they're doing something else that's kind of negative or bad or illegal. So in this book, they talk about people have rackets. And I'm like, oh my God, that's such a great concept. And so, what is a racket? It's when you have a persistent complaint about somebody. And this actually happened to me in my career. I had a boss that I thought was a terrible boss. She suggested very stupid ideas. She wasn't listening to team members. And it's like, oh my goodness, I've been studying leadership for almost, 10, 15 years by that time. And I'm like, what is she doing? Why is she doing this? And people would complain, they would call her names, and guess what? And this is what I learned in this book and in Landmark is like when you have a racket, there's a payoff. There's an ugly truth that you don't want to recognize. And what it is, what do you gain by consistently complaining about someone or somebody? Oh, you get something really positive, right? For you. So guess what I was getting? I wanted to be right. I wanted to make her wrong. I wanted to judge her. I felt superior. I felt good instead of actually empowering her. And then the part three is because you have this racket and you're getting this ugly payoff. Well, there is also a loss because it's an illegal, fraudulent business. So what is that loss? It's that there's going to be a negative result as if you're constantly complaining. And guess what it was? My work performance was suffering. I didn't actually have a positive relationship with my boss. And it was only until I had a coach that helped me with this problem. It's like, what? I'm having so difficulty. And then when my coach says, Tim, instead of judging her, why don't you empower her? Don't you understand that she's operating from fear? That's why she's trying to command and control everybody so she can show their superiors how awesome she is. And I'm like, oh, I get it now. And so now, instead of me judging her, I did empower her. So I practiced the techniques, the communication skills that we learn in Electus Society about listening to her. How could I empower her? And guess what? Long story short, transformed my whole relationship with her. Everybody else hated her, disliked her. I liked her and she liked me. It's because I understood her and I stopped judging her. So that's what's possible for all of you. Okay. So now let's go to FFC, all right? Friends, family, and community. Now, I sent out an email prior to this training. I'm like, hey, did anybody else recommend any books? And Naresh, one of the members, basically said, yes, I actually recommend this book, How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. And so here is there's a lot of different concepts in this book. I'll just give you one. Principle number one is don't criticize, condemn, or complain, which goes off of what we were saying before, right? Criticism is futile because it puts a person on the defensive. It usually makes him or her strive to justify themselves. That's what Dale Carnegie says. So again, uh, don't argue, don't criticize, don't condemn. It just doesn't work. It's just not a successful way to interact with friends, families, and your community. And so I just wanted to take a brief moment to say I wanted to give more gifts for people who decide to help support and become founding members and supporters of Electus Society. If you're not familiar, we have it's kind of like a Patreon page, which is called buymeacoffee.com/Electus Society. And for the price of like a Starbucks coffee, you can help support us and help Electus Society grow. And so what I'm going to be starting to do now for those people who are financial supporters and wanting to grow and give back, well, I'm going to give them a lot more gifts. And so one of these gifts that I want to give you for anybody who's currently a founding member and a financial supporter, or anybody who else after watching this training that you decide to help support and grow Electus Society, I'm going to give you two gifts. This is the first one. I read the whole How to Win Friends and Influence People entire book, and I summarized it, and I have all these notes on all the different principles and just what my notes are from each one of that. And that's going to be a gift for you if you sign up today or at any point in the future as a supporter of Electus Society. I really want to thank, we have about 11 people right now who are active founding and supporters. Some of them prefer to be anonymous. That's fine. Thank you, George, Henry, Kieran, Matthew, Neil, Shania, Tatan, Tatiana, Yi, and Yin. And then there's also people who've given one donations. I just give them as honorable mentions. But all these people, yes, Kieran, that's you. So as soon as I send this video recording, anybody who's an active founder and supporter, I'm going to send you this gift, right? Anybody who's not will still get this whole video. But if you join and become a supporter of Electus Society, I'm going to actually send you copies of these gifts. Okay? Just letting you all know. All right, the next book for FFC, right? Friends, Family, and Community. Actually, excuse me, correction. Is this, yeah. So this is for Friends, Family, and Community. The reason why I hesitated for a second, I'm like, this book is not only applicable to friends and family and community. This is applicable to everything. This is applicable to leadership. This is applicable to your career. I highly recommend you watch this book, right? 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey, right? Stephen Covey has long passed away, but this book, like I say, is the PhD of leadership. And so I'm not going to go through all the 7 habits of highly effective people, but there is a concept, because I recommended this book of how to win friends and influence people, there is something I want to share with you. These 2 different books give 2 different perspectives, okay? So the How to Win Friends and Influence People is a very good book, right? I appreciate all those concepts. But if you've ever seen the Broadway play Hamilton, you know that there's a character, Aaron Burr, right? And so Aaron Burr runs for president. And there's so much frustration. Why? Because Aaron Burr has mastered what 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, Stephen Covey say, is the personality ethic. These are all the principles on how to win friends and influence people. Smile more, get people to like you, fake interest in their hobbies, have this power look, and that's what Aaron Burr would do. And they would say, what are your policies? And he would always talk in both and never actually commit to one idea or another, because he was constantly trying to win influence with all these different people, right? And so the reason why I want to set this up as a warning, because even though I got value from Dale Carnegie, just realize that a lot of people have read this book and can use it to try to manipulate you and try to become your friend. Oh, I remember you. I send text messages remembering your birthday and all this other kind of stuff. And we're friends and we have so many similarities. And they always say your name and stuff like that. It's like, yes, but is that person virtuous? Do they have a good character? Because you can be misled by very charismatic, nice, sweet people. But unless you actually work on this character aspect of it, and this is what Stephen Covey says, the character ethic, this is represented by George Washington in Hamilton play. This is somebody who, again, these are the values of Electus Society: humility, integrity, courage, patience, and the golden rule: treat people how you would like to be treated, right? It's actual respect. So again, use both of these books to help you with friends, family, and community. Okay. I'm just seeing all these comments. Thanks, Neil, for the positive comments. And yes, Kieran, your middle school advisor, recommended or read you this book. That's really awesome. These books are amazing. So again, that's why I really want to help encourage you to do. And right now, these books are so classic that I'm not actually asking you to go out and buy these books right now. You may even be able to type in YouTube or Rumble and type in the name of the book and see if they have audiobook and see if it's free, because these may be in the public domain, or again, because I don't want you to have to pay for things. Everybody's on budget if you can get it for free. So that's something I want to recommend for you. Okay, let's talk about the 5th area of life, which is spirituality. Let me get some water. Okay. First, as you know, being as part of Electus Society, it's very, very sensitive topic to talk about spirituality. And so what I wanted to share with you is, remember, I respect all of you, whatever your beliefs are, whether you're agnostic, atheist, or a particular religion. Like the most common religions of people in the United States is, number 1 is Christianity, or this is really the world. Christianity is number 1. Number 2 is Muslim. Third is Hindu, right? And then the 4th is Buddhist, and then all these other ones, different others, including Judaism, right? So there's all these different religions. I just didn't have room to include all these different books, because there's a lot of different scriptures, different books, philosophies, whether it's Buddhism and things like that. So here's my philosophy. Just wanted to share with you. I love the quote from Edgar Casey. Okay, and Edgar Casey, for those of you who don't know, he was a clairvoyant. Some people called him psychic. He would do readings for people, and some people are like, "Oh, is that a psychic? That sounds like a charlatan." No, he was a devout Christian, read the Bible, and had some amazing life experiences, and then would lie down on a table and do readings for people, and he never charged a penny for all these readings. His life mission was to help people, and he was able to help people, help solve their health problems and stuff like that. And he was able to say stuff about our past, our history, and he's considered one of the father of the New Age movement. They called him the sleeping prophet, and they also credit him for teaching a lot of healthy alternatives, homeopathy, and all these different things that people can do to heal themselves without actually going to traditional medicine. So one of the readings, somebody asked him, they said, Edgar, which religion is the best religion? You know, and Edgar took a long pause, and his response was priceless. He says, it's the religion that a person actually practices. That's the best religion. And I just love that line because I don't care whether you're a Christian, just be the best Christian you are. If you're a Muslim, be the best Muslim you are, be the best Hindu, be the best, if you're an atheist, be the best atheist, or be agnostic, be the best agnostic, be the best human being you could be. So I just love that, and I wanted to share with you. So I'm going to share with you two of my favorite books that I recommend in terms of spirituality. So here's the first one. Oh, actually, before I get into that, we're going to talk about spirituality. For those of you who are new in Electus Society, a lot of my programs, I want to teach the success principles. So one of the most successful programs to cause a transformation was Alcoholics Anonymous, and they have this 12-step program, as you've heard. And here's what I love. It says, step 2 of the 12-step program is that you have to believe in a power that is greater than yourself. And some people call that power God. And guess what they said in Alcoholics Anonymous? They said, we're not going to tell you what that power is. You have to get to define it. And so that's what I love, because different people have different religions and different perspectives. What is that power? Who is God? What is God? Is it the creator? Is it Brahma? Is it, God, consciousness, intuition? We talk about leadership, talking about your intuition and your gut. Is it your I am presence? Is it Allah? Is it your Father? Is it Christ? Is the Holy Spirit? There's so many different ones that you use. I like to use the term higher self. Why? Because if you believe that God, the creator, exists, well, if we're a child of God, we have God within us, right? And so to me, higher self is, what is the best version of you? That's what it is, right? In those movies, whenever you say, okay, I could take an action, I have the devil on my left shoulder and the angel on the right shoulder. I want you to listen to that angel on that right shoulder, that conscious, that's your higher self, the one that wants the best for you. So trust in that. So I just wanted to share that perspective. Okay, so here are my two favorite books. You might thought that I would recommend the Bible. So I read the Bible, the King James Version, and I started reading it and I'm suffering. Okay, I'm like, this is so boring. I can't stop it. Like, I started in Genesis and I'm like, what is all this scandalous story? Oh, this guy has to pretend that his wife is his sister, because if his sister goes to this new, if he goes with his wife to this land, the king will kill kill him, and so that he can marry his wife. It's like, what am I reading? What are all these stories? But guess what? I did read Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, which I found very inspirational about the stories of Jesus. Whether you believe in him as whatever you want to do, just read it as an important historical figure and lessons that we can learn from him. And so my favorite book that somebody gave us is this book called the Action Bible. And why do I love this book? They turned the whole Bible into 230 stories in the form of a comic book. And so it's like, wow, now it's come alive, and it's 2 inches thick. It's really, really big. And you read it, and I'm hooked, right? Every time I read a story, and you learn all about the history, all these different names, David and Goliath, right? And all these different stories, and it's a great learning lesson. So in the New Testament of this comic book Bible, I remember this is all Electus Society training, and I want to talk about leadership. And so one of my favorite stories in this book is the individual, the Rabbi Jesus, right? He basically gets tempted by the devil or Satan. Now, as I'm as I'm a student starting to study different, scriptures, different historical records, different studies, I'm starting to learn what is the root word. Where did the term Satan actually come from? And based on some of the books and things that I love this term Satan. Whether you believe in the devil or not, just that root word means to turn away from love, peace, and harmony. And I'm like, wow. Or to turn away. What is God? God is love. So it's like, what does it mean to turn away from Satan? It means it's a reminder that you're turning away from love. And so in this book, it's the story of Jesus, and he basically gets tempted by the devil 3 times, or Satan. And one of them, he's fasting for 40 days in the desert, and he sees a rock, and he basically, devil says, hey, you can turn that to stone, and so you can actually eat it. Why don't you do it? Go ahead, do it, do it, do it. And guess what he says? He says, men cannot live on bread alone. And so one of the things that I take that as, what kind of leadership lesson can I give, is, do you have discipline over your human appetites, right? As a leader, if I am in a position of authority, and some other company wants me to do what they want to do, am I for sale? What if they promise me money? What if they promise me women? What if they promise me riches? It's like, wow, we have to have discipline and not be tempted. I even heard the most incredible story that Gandhi, this amazing figure who was able to prevent a war, right, with Pakistan and India, guess what he did? He would actually, this is going to sound bizarre or crazy. I heard this story. It's that he actually would sleep in bed, and he would have naked virgins next to him. And you're like, what the hell? That is so weird. But now I get it. He was a man who did such loving things, and he's like, I'm not going to be tempted by anything. And I'm like, that's a man who cannot be seduced. That's a man who cannot be tempted. And so I keep asking all of you, is like, are you that strong? How much money would you be? Were you willing to sell your soul for food, for money, for power? It's all like, wow, that's what I get from this lesson. Discipline, right? Oh, Kieran, you've never heard that story from Gandhi? Yeah, people try to use that as a slander. I view that as, that's part of his spiritual journey to overcome amazing things. And this is the same guy who starved himself because there was conflict between Pakistan and the Hindus, and he was willing to stop that. Now, whether this story is 100% true, I don't know. Maybe we find out it's not true, but I just like the idea. What is the lesson I take from that story? The second test, right, from Satan. He basically takes Jesus up above the synagogue, and he says, okay, what I want you to do is, I want you to jump off here, and because you have the power of angels at your disposal, I want you to jump off and have the angels catch you, and you won't have one stone hit your foot. And then guess what Jesus says to him? He's like, thou shalt not tempt the Lord thy God, right? And I'm like, temptation, what does that mean? And I read what the word temptation means. It means when you actually um, do something that immediately feels good, but in the end is not constructive. And so I really got that. The idea is that even if Jesus had the power to control the angels, just to use them, to have them catch him and jump off a building, that's not using power judiciously. So I take that as a leadership, story, to basically say, how many leaders use their power for their own destructive purposes? And so I take that lesson. And then the last one is that Jesus takes him up to the mountain. Satan takes him up to the mountain and says, Jesus, you see this whole kingdom, all this land? It will be yours. They will call you king. You'll have all the power in the world. Just worship me. And he's like, no, I'm not going to worship you. I'm going to worship God. And for that, it could be love. It could be, whatever that is for you. That's what it means. And so to me, it's a lesson is, it's not about your ego. You don't do things for fame. You don't do things for power. You do things to serve. So again, just something I wanted to share. And then the second book that I wanted to share with you is Unveiled Mysteries by Godfrey Ray King. And this is part of my spiritual journey. And again, in this book, there's a whole series of 20 books. I'm only up to 7. I'm only book 7, but I've read the first one, Unveiled Mysteries by Godfrey Ray King, and The Magic Presence by Godfrey Ray King. And then the third book is the I Am Discourses. I only recommend, if you're going to read them in order. You could also find the videos or audiobooks on YouTube, but start with the first one, Unveiled Mysteries. And in this book, whether you believe it or not, it doesn't matter. To me, I take certain lessons, and he gives different laws of life, and different what he calls ascended master laws. And he says this line: what you think and you feel, you bring into your form. Where your thought is, that's where you are. For you are the consciousness, and what you meditate upon, you become. And he also gave this other line is, you know what your God is? Even if you're atheist or agnostic, your God is whatever you focus on. So imagine you want to spend all your days. How many days do you have? 24 hours a day, but you spend all night, several hours looking up pornography or whatever it is. If whatever your attention or mind is going to, that is your God. That is what you focus on. So it blew me away. And then this is the other line from the book from Saint Germain: when you allow your mind to dwell upon thoughts of hate, condemnation, lust, envy, jealousy, criticism, fear, doubt, suspicion, well, guess what's going to happen? You're going to start to have negative feelings. And these feelings of irritation generate within you. And then guess what you have? You will certainly have discord, failure, and disaster in your mind, your body, and the world. Have you ever seen people who are so angry and mean and that they get older and then just look? You can see it in their face. They're just filled with hatred. That just breaks down the body, and you can just see it in their faces. And yet you see some people who are in their 70s, 80s, and are just so loving people, and you're like, oh my God, they have like baby faces. It's like, how is that? It's like what you think and feel, and it affects your body and your world and what you do. And so again, I just find these great principles to live by. Okay. And then remember, here's gift number 2. If you become a financial supporter and support Electus Society for the price of a cup of coffee or tea, because I don't drink coffee, I'm going to give you all the summary and notes of what I got from Unveiled Mysteries, all these different Ascended Master laws. And let's just look at number 4, the great law of magnetic attraction. And I'm like wondering, all these people on Instagram and all these influencers, and they talk about the law of attraction. I'm like, where did they get it from? Is it from these original books that were written in the 1930s? So again, I don't want to listen to those influencers. I want to go directly to the source. And if this I can learn on how to live a better life and how to better serve people and be more loving and become ambassador of love and peace, then I want to learn what these lessons and what these teachers have to say. And I will accept whatever resonates with me, and whatever doesn't, I'll reject or consider. That's it. Because I'm open. Uh, I saw Francesca. What, Tim? No coffee? Uh, I know. I used to drink coffee once or there. When I used to have asthma, they said it was good for your breathing. For your stimulation. But now I just do green tea. I do yerba mate. It has a little bit of caffeine, but I do a very very little amount because my body is super sensitive, and I'll be jumping off walls. But for everybody else who loves coffee, just drink it in moderation, or small amounts are not so strong. Okay. All right. Great, Francesca. I think since you drink matcha, I'll stay. Thanks for Francesca. All right. So here's the last one. All right. The last 2 books that I'm going to recommend about relationships. Right now, this has to do with intimate relationships with a loved one, a partner. Okay. Now, all I can do is I can speak from a perspective from as a man, in my relationship. But all of these books that I'm going to recommend, I think that they're applicable to men, women, gay, lesbian couples, whatever it may be. These books are very helpful for me, and I recommend them to other people as well. And so this was a book that was recommended by my mentor, by Dr. Robert Glover, called No More Mr. Nice Guy. And look at what the subtitle says: A Proven Plan for Getting What You Want in Life, Sex, and Life. That's interesting. So what was this book all about? Okay. It basically says that there's a lot of guys out there that are nice guys. And what does that mean? It means that the way we were raised is, if we just are nice to people, then we're going to get what we want in life. And this could be a lot of factors based on our culture, based on how we're educated, based on our family. Again, my father wasn't around. I grew up with my mom. And so, again, this is what we're trying to always do. And this happens to girls too, right? They always say, be a nice girl, don't have conflict, and you can hear the indoctrination. It's like, be nice, don't play nice, be well. And so guess what happens? I grew up thinking that in relationships, that's what I needed to do. Have you ever seen the movie The Princess Bride? If you have, share in the chat. I love it. It's one of my favorite movies. And there's this guy, Wesley, who's basically says, as you wish. Anything he does, because he's actually a servant working on this farmland for Buttercup, and this was his code word for I love you, right? As you wish, whatever she wants. And so all these things that we were taught, oh, happy wife, happy life. Okay, so if I just do whatever I want, and excuse me, if I just do whatever my wife wants and I just make her happy, then I'll be happy. Guess what? That's not true. Okay, it's a lie. It's a myth. Why? Because if you're constantly suppressing what you internally want, what your higher self wants, right? Guess what you do? You don't become a nice guy. You become a mean guy. And this is Joe Pesci from the movie Home Alone, right? And he's always angry and cursing under his breath, and that's what this book was about, is like, nice guys are really nice guys, they're mean guys. Why do they become mean? It's because I was taught, well, if I'm just nice, maybe my wife will love me more. If I'm just nice and I do whatever she wants, then I'm going to get love and affection. But I did all those things and I didn't get them. And so you think I'm like, this is the worst game ever, because I think I'm getting what I want by being nice. And in reality, I'm building up all this resentment and I'm getting angry, right? And then you start going into rackets, what we talked about before. And so this book was really about, for people who are very agreeable, who are constantly trying to people please other people. It's like, no, you got to stop it. You have to start becoming more disagreeable. And for those of you who've seen other societies and different trainings, they give you exercises where you have to say, I want you to say no to a person and risk offending them. You anticipate that they're going to be upset with you. Deal with that. Build that as like a muscle. And that's what I actually had to do. And it worked. And I was able to have a more fruitful relationship with my wife. Now, here's my last book recommendation, okay? And you're going to like, Tim, how could you even recommend these books? This is pornography. This is about bondage. This is about S&M. And it's like, Tim, what are you talking about? This is a leadership society. What are you bringing up these books for? Okay. Let me drink a water before I talk about this book. Okay. So, 50 Shades of Grey became a national bestseller. Okay. Women all over the world were reading this book. you know, and you're like, Kieran, I'm reading your comments. Tim, what's going on? Right. So I am fascinated by what's happening in the zeitgeist. Okay. So I'm going to read this book because all these women and people are reading these books, and I'm hearing all these stories that people's love lives are getting better as a result of reading this books. Women are excited, and I'm like, what is it in this book that really is getting, people all hot and bothered? So I actually watched and read this book not as, oh, let me just hear about people having sex. I actually wanted to know, like, as like a sociologist, like, what the hell is going on? And just as you know, there was 3 series of the books, right? And then they actually made a movie, a 3 series of movies. I do not recommend you watch the movies unless you really want to. To me, I'm going to share with you what I got out from the book. So here are some principles. What is about this book that's so amazing? Well, not only did this author E.L. James write 3 books, she also wrote 3 books from the perspective of Christian Grey, the male protagonist, not only from Anastasia Steele, who was the female protagonist. And when I read these 2 different books, I was blown away, because the first time I could actually see how in this book, in this author, how a woman thinks, interprets, communicates, versus how a man thinks, interprets, and communicates. And it was night and day. And I actually felt, for the first time in life, I actually had empathy. Like, wow, women's brains, men's brain. And again, there may be lesbians, gay people, whatever. You have different couples. Again, there may be certain, as it applicable, whether some people are masculine, feminine, whatever it means in a relationship. I just think that certain partners demonstrate different opposite characteristics. I tend to think that there are certain, in a relationship, some people tend to be more left brain, some tend to be more right brain. And what I was starting to discover is, wow, in this story of the book, this pen could drop or the character Christian Grey would just leave the room, and then Anastasia would suddenly start saying, what did that mean? What does he think? Does he not care about me anymore? And I'm like, oh my goodness, this is exhausting to think about all the emotional impact. And then the guy, Christian Grey, is like, oh, I just have to take care of something. And I started to make me realize, and when I started talking with my sister, my mother, my wife, and I'm like, wow, you guys really worry a lot, don't you? She's like, yeah, we're constantly thinking about the thoughts and emotions. What does this mean? What does this impact? I'm like, oh my God, as a man, can I just say I'm sorry? Like, I have empathy for you. Like, it's exhausting. She's like, my wife's like, thank you. And this changed my perspective. And then as these characters, what did she find so attractive about Christian Grey? And I'm actually going to make this applicable to all relationships, whether you're a woman or a man. It's like there are certain key concepts that I think that people really want in a relationship. And yes, there's some extreme examples in this book. You know, Christian Grey has a lot of emotional issues because he was traumatized and he was an orphan, and he used sex as his coping mechanism, and that's why he abuses women and does this stuff, because that's his way of getting at his mother. And guess what? The book's all about Anastasia, the love of his life, ends up transforming him, able to heal him. And so this is part of the fantasies genre of a woman's able to tame the beast, the story of Beauty and the Beast. Like, all these are tropes, all of these are stereotypes, but there are some elements of truth. And then I started to realize, it's like, wow, what do couples or partners want? They want to feel safety, right? And Christian Grey provides that. They want to feel nurtured. They want to feel provided for. There's something very powerful, but when Christian Grey takes initiative, like, and it almost plays out like a battle between these two. It's like, oh, I ordered food for you. She's like, I don't want that food, and then it becomes like a flirtatious back and forth, like, I want my own autonomy. And he's like, no, I want to protect you. I need you to eat, and stuff like that. And again, this is a novel, but what I really care about you is I want you to actually take all the learning lessons in terms of relationships, right? And so what is it when it comes to a relationship? It's like, if my wife, again, coming from the No More Mr. Nice Guy, it's like she's working all day, she's coming home, she's exhausted. How many times do guys say, what do you want to eat? And then my wife's like, I don't know, I'm tired. And then you start recommending, oh, why don't we get Chinese food? Oh, I don't want to eat Chinese. What about Italian? I don't want Italian. And it's like, wow, how many times it would be better if I just took initiative and would have just say, hey, babe, don't worry, dinner's been taken care of. I've already ordered it. I'm gonna surprise you when you come home. And it's like, oh, that's so nice. Like, you just did that for me. Now, granted, I've ordered a bunch of different meals, because who knows, if maybe she wants one thing or other, or she can save it for later. But it's like, wow, like, I didn't really think about this as much. And it doesn't mean that I never ask my wife for what she wants, but it just changes difference. Like, I even saw one little YouTube video once where a guy basically says, honey, I got a surprise for you. I'm going to take you out for dinner. Guess what? And she's like, what? Guess. And she's like, oh, are we going to go to that Italian restaurant I love? Yes, that's it. We're going there. And he had no idea what restaurant he was, but it was a way to get her to pick the restaurant she actually wanted without making her have to think about it, right? So again, feeling desired. Wow. Do you know how I'm going to share with you some quotes from Christian Grey? Do you know how many couples, in order, in the initial parts of a relationship, there's the, you're attractive to each other, and you really want to be with other, but then as a result of being a couple for a long time, you just become like a roommate. You just take them for granted. And it's like, why is there so much cheating going on in this world? It's because, guess what? You've lost the desire for that other person, that partner. And there's something about the way Christian Grey and even Anastasia, for him, they just desire each other. And so my question is, how can you fuel that desire, right? And then there's also adventure. It's nice to come home, watch Netflix or watch a movie and relax on the couch and cuddle, but what about excitement? What about adventure? We need a little bit of novelty. um, so I see your comment here, and now you understand the struggle, Tim. Yes, I now understand what it's like to be in the woman's brain, and I have nothing but empathy, right? And so let me show you what desire actually looks like. And I actually wrote down all his quotes because, remember, I was looking at it from a sociological perspective. How would you feel? And whether this was a man, woman, I don't care, is like Christian Grey is obsessed with Anastasia. He's a millionaire. According to the book, he's the most handsome guy. And guess what? Beautiful women will come all around him and he ignores them. And he just focuses completely on Anastasia. They're on the beach and then he always wants to protect her. And she's out there getting some sun and he puts the umbrella shade and he says, if you'll burn, then I won't be able to touch you. Again, there's this flirtation going on of feeling that desire. You're really a lovely woman. I'm a lucky man. Like, how many times would a couple feel good if that person feels desired, appreciated, complimented, and even says, I plan on having you for dessert? Again, I've been in a relationship for over 20 years and I'm doing everything I can to keep my relationship, alive, keep that desire going. It's like we want to hear that. We want to hear those things, that I want you, I want to be with you. Even these text messages. This guy's a master at flirtation. And he says, how's the sexiest in the world doing today? Today doing. And it's just like thinking of her. What are you wearing? Bet you look super cute. Send me a pic. I'm bored. Want to go to an adventure this weekend? Like, there is something about he does. Now, how do I apply that in my life in terms of creating desire and stuff in my relationship? It's something so simple. When I'm thinking about my wife, when I appreciate her, I'm just sending her a text message at work. Hey, I'm thinking about you. Like, it doesn't have to be that complicated, right? And I'm not going to share everything I share with you because I want to respect my wife's privacy and stuff like that. But I want you guys understand the concepts. If you want a healthy relationship, you have to create safety, security, comfort, love, desire. Like, all those things are important. The importance of having a date night where you do things together, that you actually talk, you don't just do the routine. So that's my advice. That's my insight that I wanted to share. So I hope you found it helpful. So in summary, that concludes the training on health. These are my two recommended books, Prescription for Nutritional Healing and Tony Robbins' Life Force. Remember to get your sleep, to eat more vegetables, more legumes and lentils, chickpeas and stuff like that, olive oil, to exercise, etc. Rich Dad Poor Dad is to realize your house is not an asset. You have to invest according to money. Master of the Game. You have to invest into your 401k, 403b. You have to use the S&P 500 and save first and use compound interest. Right. For your career, Jack Canfield, The Success Principles. Start taking responsibility for your life. You can't control the events. All you can control is your response. The 3 Laws of Performance. Highly recommend that book for your career. For your relationships, How to Win Friends and Influence People. Again, if you become a financial supporter of Electus Society, I'll give you the summary and notes. 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Understand character ethic versus the personality ethic to actually have humility, integrity, character. It's not just smiling and knowing people's names. And then Spiritual, the Action Bible. To read the Bible in the form of a comic book, Unveiled Mysteries, No More Mr. Nice Guy, and yes, the 50 Shades of Grey series, because I want you to understand, if you're a couple in a relationship, again, what is desire? How do you generate that? How do you create that? And it's a very funny love, not funny, but it's a love story. The whole 3 books, are all about their love story and adventures, and there's murder and things like that. So I found it very entertaining. So that's it. Thank you, everybody. I'm just reading your comments right now. Geronimo, I see your comment. Thank you so much for such a valuable lesson. You're welcome. I'm so glad that you could join us. Francesca, thank you so much. I see your comments. Now, for those of you, I'll take any questions that you may have right now. If you can, I'd love for you to give feedback. I'm going to give 2 links. Hold on. Let me just bring up the 2 links that I wanted to share with you that I shared at the beginning, which includes the bit.ly the forms link. Give me 1 second. How can I scroll up? Here we go. Here are 2 links I want to share with you. Control, copy, paste. Here is the Buy Me a Coffee link, as well as the Google form link to get your feedback. I love to have your feedback. As a result, as soon as you submit your feedback to this presentation or training, the thank you page will pop up and you can actually download this entire PowerPoint as a gift. So I'll take any questions or any final comments. Does anybody have any questions that they'd like to ask me, or any comments that they'd like to share? I got your comment. Thank you, Kieran. Any questions? Final comments?
Oh, Tim, I have a question.
Sure, go ahead.
Um, so what happens if a relationship falls apart? How do you pick yourself back up and
Oh, that's
strengthen your other relationships to make you whole until you're ready to get back out there?
okay. Great question. The first thing that I want to that my mind jumps to is we did another training. This was part. It was called mental health. So if you just type in Electus Society and YouTube mental health, or go to the training overview, it's in like it was a level 2 training towards the end. And it's the story of Jennifer Osorio Allen. And she was a psychotherapist, and she was trying to get into a relationship. She had boyfriends that were with her and broke up with her, and she was dating, and it was just a nightmare for her. And one of the things that she started having self-doubts, right? All about like, oh, I'm not going to find anybody. This is so hard. Like, why can't I find anybody? All of her friends had other partners, and it was really, really tough for her. And then what she actually realized is she did a deep meditation, and someone recommended that she, after a deep meditation, she connect with her higher self, right? The best version of her. And in religions, they call that the still small voice. After a deep meditation, if you after you quiet your mind, you can ask yourself for guidance. And so she meditated, and this is a story in that training about mental health and wellness. She asked her higher self, why haven't I found anybody yet? And guess what the answer was? The answer was, you're not ready. You need to keep working on yourself. And she heard it within her, and she just started bawling, crying, and like, because deep down she knew it was true. How can you actually find a partner if you're not strong emotionally? And she started to work on herself. Eventually throughout that training, she ends up going on a trip, and she started doing affirmations, and she's like, I love yourself, I love myself, I'm just grateful, I'm gratitude, I do want a partner, I'll find it when it's the right time. And guess what? After she went on that trip into Brazil, she basically realized how much she needed to love herself. And then what she ended up doing is then she went back on the dating market, and guess what she found? She met on a date, and she met her future husband. And my question to her is, would she ever found him if she wasn't emotionally ready? So that was the first thing that I thought about that story that you have, in terms of Kieran, about finding a partner, and actually whether it doesn't work out. And remember, this goes back to this training. I've been on a roller coaster with my wife in terms of our relationship, right? We met in college, so this was around 2001, right? And then we started dating in college. We broke up in college. We got back together. Then by the time then we got married in 2011. But by 2015, remember, I was unhappy in my relationship. I was actually seeking out love and affection from other people. And then I did Landmark, and then I basically discovered that I'm responsible for my environment. And if my wife doesn't love me, instead of pointing my finger and blaming her for this relationship, I have to change. I have to change the way I think. I have to change the way I feel. And I have to stop blaming her, and I have to start loving her, and I have to start loving myself. And I ended up becoming completely honest with her that I had never done before. I confessed to my infidelities and stuff like that. She was really angry and upset, and we went to counseling and therapy. And why am I telling you all this story, which you probably heard over and over, Kieran? It's just because I was working on our relationship, and for so many years, up until 2019, I was ready to leave her again. Why? Because I was just unhappy. We had done all this work, and I remember I meditated, I prayed, and I asked my higher self, what should I do? And my higher self said, leave her. And I'm like, wait, what? And yes, what ended up happening is I got the courage to leave her, and I told her we need to end this relationship. And guess what happened? She was like, all right, I guess we're going to split up. And then guess what happened? 3 days later, she came back, and she's like, Tim, I've recognized I haven't been working on a relationship. And if I can't work it on with you, I'm not going to work it on with anybody else. And I want to get back together. And I was like, I'm not prepared for that answer. And so I had to like wait on the day or so. And then I asked my higher self, and my higher self said, yeah, get back to her. And then I had a new wife. So the reason why I tell you that story is because every relationship is different. I will never tell somebody, hey, you should be in this relationship or you shouldn't be in this relationship. What I'll tell them is you need to find out for yourself, stop blaming them as the partner, be the type of person that you would want in a relationship, right? If you want to love in a relationship, then you need to be loving in a relationship. And then the always question becomes is, Tim, but what if I'm loving in a relationship and I keep loving my partner and keep loving my partner, but they're not changing and they're not working on themselves? And it's like, should I leave them or not? And I say, well, I can't tell you, or how long should you work on the relationship, for a month or year, 10 years, 5 years. All I know is after 2015, I worked on it for 4 years. Maybe even if you actually think about it, almost 15 years, right? Um, and like 15, 20 years, I was constantly working on my relationship. So only you can find that answer. But if you keep being loving and the other partner is not loving you back, well, then guess what's going to happen is your higher self is going to say, no, this is not working. I'm continuing to be loving and I'm not getting that love back. Then maybe I've outgrown this relationship. Maybe it's time to find a new relationship. So I know I gave a very long answer, but the reason why I did, Karen, is because I understand that everybody may be on different levels in terms of the relationship journey. And I wanted to give my perspective on all the different types of relationship. Did I answer your question or do you have any follow-up, Kieran?
I would say, Tim, you definitely answered my question. I also appreciate hearing your insight and perspective on it. So that definitely gives me some clarity.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I would say like in my situation, I decided to follow my higher self and I decided to go with what was right and to let go of my partner because I need to choose myself even though it's hard.
Yeah, it definitely
Yeah.
is. Remember, we started this training about the risk and scary. It's like we want to be loved, we want to be taken care of, we want to have that connection with somebody, and you know what? To lose that hurts, right? But in order to have what you want in life, what is your biggest fear? I can tell you what my biggest fear was my wife leaving me, right? But I wanted love so much that I was seeking love from other people. And then when I went to this landmark worldwide course and they say you have to be honest with her, I'm like, yeah, but if I tell her the truth, she's gonna leave me. And so that was the scariest thing I've ever done in my life. And as I was telling her, I almost threw up in my mouth. That's how scared I was. But what does it mean to take full responsibility for your life, right? What do you want to create, right? And we don't know the story, right? We don't know if you will ever get back with this partner, right? Who knows? That partner can end up changing and then meet you 5, 10 years later. It's like, I've changed, you know? And you're like, do I get back to this person or not? You know, it's like, have you changed? All right, show me, you know? I very rarely do I trust people on what they say anymore. Show me your actions. Prove to me. You know, everybody will swear up and I'll do all this other stuff. The only reason why I was able to save my relationship is because I changed. I proved it to my wife. You know, people are going to think am I crazy. How much trust do I have with my wife? She can access my own phone and she can see my own text messages. You know, everyone was like, "Oh my God, how would you let your wife or partner do that?" It's like I needed to make her feel safe. You know, when there's other pretty women around, I'm not checking them out. You know, it's like, you know, that's what you want in a partner. So keep loving yourself, Kieran. You deserve to have a partner that loves you back. That doesn't mean that there won't be trials and tribulations. There won't be conflict. A healthy relationship does have conflict, but there's a balance, right? You can have a couple of disagreements, but if you have so many disagreements, then guess what? It's not a fruitful relationship, right? You need to have a loving relationship. So I applaud you for being scary to go back on your own, to go back out there, you know. But just remember to keep doing your gratitude journal, keep doing your affirmations, keep envisioning who you want as a relationship partner, and instead of being selfish and say, ooh, I want this partner, I want a partner that's this, like this, like this, like, okay, you can have your list, but guess what? Once you've identified that person, ask yourself, what do you think that type of person is going to want in you? Right? Oh, we haven't really thought about that, right? I just keep having a wish list of who I want as my partner, but in reality is like, well, am I selfless? Am I nurturing? Am I giving feedback? Am I adding value to my partner? People don't want to look at themselves. They only want to look at the other person. So I hope that's helpful, Kieran. And
I
not
think
only
so, Tim. Thank you. I appreciate it.
yeah, and I'm so glad that you asked that question because we ended on relationships, and I know that there's a lot of people who are listening to this training are going to be single, that are dating, or had a breakup. And this is what this is about. This is real world stuff. I'm talking about real stuff. I'm putting myself out there, because I want you to learn from my successes and failures, and that's what makes these trainings different than your random leadership influencer on TikTok. All right. I appreciate I love all of you. Thank you
Tim,
guys for.
quick question for you if you still have a second, if that's
I
okay.
do, Neil. Go ahead.
Yeah, Tim, first of all, thanks so much for hosting this elected session. It was actually my first one, so a lot to take in. My mind goes to the part where you spoke about we have to, when we become, workers in society, we try to find our why, our career. It's important to work with integrity, understand who we're working for, to see the bigger picture, like you gave your example with your boss. But also you mentioned something that I have been struggling with, and I don't know if this is a consequence of me being a grad student with a job, but timeliness. You said timeliness is such an important component of being somebody in society who
Yeah.
has to deliver, who has to reach certain targets. Um, I wanted to ask you, as somebody who has found this to be difficult, and maybe this is because I have my hands in too many baskets. What are some tips that you have for people who are struggling to meet these deadlines? And, how could I improve on my own endeavors to become more timely with how I keep promises or meet these deliverables that I promise my boss, but also in my personal life?
Great question. The first thing I'm going to recommend is one training that we did called The Biggest Challenge Leaders Face and Mastering Success Habits. It's by far the most important because, spoiler alert, what's the biggest challenge? It's time. It's for you, it's for me, it's for everybody. So you already look at your higher self already had the answer. The reason why is your hand is in too many buckets. You have overcommitted yourself with the amount of responsibilities. But guess what? I have a compliment for you. People who are movers and shakers tend to push themselves to take on more because you will never have known how much you could take on unless you push yourself, right? But we're constantly trying to find ways to improve it to get more done in less time. I like your word, amen. But here's what I would say is when I start off my morning, when I do my gratitude journal, I have my to-do list of what I want to accomplish. I already give myself permission that I'm never going to complete 100% of my to-do list. I have to just focus on what is the most important thing. So it's called the prioritization, right? And I sacrifice, it's Sunday night. I appreciate you and all the people who are watching this training and stuff like that. I could be watching a movie with my wife, but I'm like, no, I care about this community. I'm committed to this. So I do this, right? I'm not on Facebook. I am not on Instagram. You're like, Tim, Electus Society could grow so much more if you could just start posting videos. I'm like, that will come. But I need to focus on what's most important to me right now. And I don't know what's going on in my relationships with my family members. I don't know who just had a kid. I don't know what their names are. It's like that's my choice because I made a priority. Priority to me, Electus Society is high up there. My relationship with my wife, my health, all these other things. Everything else that's not part of that, it's not part of my focus. And so prioritization is the one. And then the third thing. So one, watch the training. Number two, gratitude journal. Lock your to-do list, circle, only accomplish that most important thing first before you work on other things. Three, time blocking in your calendar, right? And double the amount of time. So if you think it's going to take 3 hours, pretend it's 6 and block off those times in the calendars. And then what I want you to do, the last step, is lie to yourself, right? What does that mean? I'm like, I don't advocate lying, but I do advocate for fooling yourself into thinking that the deadline is much earlier. So, I've shared this in other previous trainings. I don't pretend as if this training happens on Sunday. When I'm preparing for it, I pretend, I fool myself like, oh, it's due this Wednesday. I start working on it. Oh my goodness, it's due this Friday. I have to do this Saturday. And so by me creating an internal deadline that's much earlier than what it is, I anticipate that and I force myself and I push myself to get stuff done. And then guess what happens? Once I actually reach that barrier and I'm like, oh, wait, it's not due this Saturday, it's actually due Sunday. I breathe a sigh of relief. And now I have more time to work on the training and make it better. So, are those 5 tips helpful for you, Neil?
Beyond helpful, Tim. You've given me a lot to think about. I think you're also referencing something I'm trying to use, like those Eisenhower matrix tables. What needs to be done now? What needs to be done later? What can be avoided? You know, but what you said about just lying to yourself and just pushing yourself, giving yourself a little bit of that kick, a little bit of manufactured stress, like, oh, it's tomorrow, so you really get into the swing of things. I think that would be helpful to me, so I will use that. Thank you so much again.
No, no problem. And again, this is for everybody because we're all struggling this, and maybe I wouldn't use the word lie. I'd be like, what is it? Fool yourself or pretend. Yeah, that's what it is. Pretend an earlier deadline, and really believe it's true, right? Because life is too busy. Things happen. We get distracted. But if you do that pretend, it seems to focus you a lot more. So, all right, we've gone way over time. I appreciate everybody who's watching this far. We covered so much content, but guess what? Rewatch this training again. That's why it's here. I want to give you a cannon, a fire hose full of information, and feel free to rewatch it. Once I post this video, feel free to share it so that you can help create better goals for all the areas of your life. Turn them, all these different tips, these books, read them, listen to audiobooks, turn them into action steps. All right. Thank you, everybody. Bye, 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 bye. Thank you so much for watching this video clip about conscious leadership. If you are committed to helping to create more conscious leaders in this world, that is leaders with more humility, more integrity, more awareness that take constructive action, then consider helping us by making a donation. Our goal is to have 600 conscious leaders develop before the end of this year. Currently, as of December 1st, we already have 400 members. And again, with your help, we can grow even further. How can you help us? Simply make a donation. If you visit buymeacoffee.com/Electus Society, you can either choose to give a monthly donation and join, and you get different access to a lot of these different membership benefits, or simply make a one-time donation. Click on the heart support button, choose 1, 3, 5, or type in any number of amount of coffees. Hit the support button and you can upload your card information on the secure platform. Thank you so much. I appreciate you, and let's continue our mission of building more leaders. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.